What's up everybody? On today's video, we're going to talk about an important topic. When is it okay for you to call the police? I'm going to give you a better idea of when it's okay to call the law and when you shouldn't be calling the law. Let's start off by examining situations when you definitely should call the law. When someone's life, safety, health, or property is in immediate danger is a good time to call the law. If you notice that somebody is having a medical condition or there's an object on the road, this is a prime time to call the police because this could prevent damages to property or life. When the potential victim is a child, someone who's elderly or disabled, may also be a good time to consider calling the law. Let's examine a few situations that I've been in personally where people have called the police needlessly. Did it hit? Yeah, it hit. Scenario 1 is a person who refused to pay me for work that I did for them. Well, this person decided to call the police as a method of intimidation, since at the end of the day, he was the one who called me to his property and he was the one who failed to make arrangements to pay me. I've seen many times where people assume that because the person they're dealing with is of a minority, that they can call the police to scare that person into doing whatever they want. That I would be afraid of the police showing up for some reason and that I would do this job for free out of fear. Small disputes like this, at best, could be handled in a civil claims court, not by dialing 911. States don't give people a fine for making reports like this that needlessly consume the time of police officers. Scenario number 2, which is very common in the state of Florida while you're biking, fishing, or enjoying public places. A homeowner who owns property adjacent to a park will claim that the park you are on is private property, and they will call the police. And on this case, he reported that I was on his private property and also that I was armed, which caused an unnecessary escalation from the part of the law enforcement. Reports like this are so common in Florida because people who are homeowners don't want people enjoying public places that are adjacent to their properties, and many times they harass or bother people. To aggravate the situation, many times the responding police officers don't really understand how to use property appraisers to understand where the boundaries are. If the properties are not surveyed, that makes it even more complicated. And many times police officers feel like taking the side of the homeowner even when the person that's in a public place has the right to be there, and they tell people that are enjoying a place they're allowed to be in that they're aggravating the situation by showing up, almost giving the homeowners the win by default. Let's listen to the audio from both of these situations and see what we can understand. Code out here. Nobody wants to pay me, and he wants me to put it inside his driveway. I came here to put the stuff on my truck. They want me to put it inside his garage. After I hauled it out because he doesn't want to pay for it. Even Naples.
Are you with this freaking nut?
I'm the nut. You called me here and you don't want to pay me. I'm the nut.
Goodbye.
I'm going to put a lien in your house.
Goodbye.
I'm putting a lien in your house.
Good. Goodbye.
Who's paying me for this? You wasted 4 hours of my time.
Goodbye.
Who's paying me? And you want me to put it inside your garage and you're not paying me?
I'm going to call the cops.
Call the cops. I'm going to put a lien in your house. Slavery hasn't existed since the 1800s.
Absolutely, I'm not saying you can't be out here. But this is a private road, and you're not going to tear up and down the road, okay? Because I pay to fix the road.
You know, I
so
pay
you
too.
can take my picture all you want.
Where's your extra license?
Right in my pocket. If you want it, you grab it.
I thought you said it was in your truck.
It's in my cell phone, I'm sorry. Right there. You can grab it.
You can take it out.
Okay, I don't want to.
I patted you down.
Okay.
You didn't have any weapons.
My license is right there.
Again, you're not in trouble like
Yeah,
that.
bro.
And in fact, my truck has my number on it even.
Right. Like we said, we're here because someone called.
No, I can assure you, officer.
You're from Naples, Ochoa?
Yes.
You're in Collier County?
Collier County.
Oh.
Thank you, officer.
And like I said, clearly if you're here to fish, you don't want to disrupt
No, I
anything.
don't. I'm out here to photograph as well. And I don't want to, you know, a bear will
Right.
hear me and it'll be gone.
I just want you to be able to enjoy it, as well as him not call, complain.
I haven't
You
done
guys-
anything.
yeah.
In fact, I recorded the encounter with him.
Okay.
He's telling me, this is my land, get the F out of here. You
Okay.
can't be back here. I'm telling him, hey, I don't have a 4x4, I'm here to fish.
Right.
And he's still telling me.
Should have told him to tell that officer.
I did.
Yeah.
I told him. I said, in fact, he confronted me And I said, look, if they're... So in this situation, he lied to the police and said that I was tearing up the road. Clearly my vehicle is not a 4x4 and he was trying to get me to leave lands that are public. These types of scenarios are very common in Florida. And again, it's needless to call the police on people who are not breaking the law. It's an embarrassment and it shows a huge lack of appreciation for the resources that you have available where you live. Here's another situation. This is more recent here in Lakewood Ranch, where somebody did the same exact thing. They were trying to tell me that I couldn't be in a public place. And just like this person lied and said that I was tearing up the road, which I obviously wasn't because my vehicle wasn't a 4x4, and there was a police officer present. It was a FWC officer at the end of the road there to the right, and he would have seen me doing it. So it was clearly a false report. But many times when these people make these types of false reports, they'll accuse you of doing something you didn't do. In this case, the person accused me of tearing up the road. In the next incident we're going to look at, the person accused me of harassing an alligator. Again, the same method of operations. Since they know when the police shows up, they're not going to tell you you're trespassing. They'll make up some other type of situation to make it seem like you're actually doing something you're not supposed to. And this is really common, and I'm sure law enforcement is well aware when they encounter these situations that the person making the report is exaggerating what happened. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What, were you screaming at me? I'm luring the alligator?
Yeah, and actually even fishing on this lake is illegal, period. Yeah, there is.
Where at? What's it? Where? Let's go look at it. Where's it at?
Listen, I'm not going to argue with you. You live in here?
Where do you live? Why is it your business where I live?
I'm not telling you where I live. Where do you live?
None of your business.
You don't live in here.
Why do you care where I live?
Because you're not supposed to be in here.
And again, the person lies saying that I'm not supposed to be there. Now, we looked at the property appraiser, and this is actually a park, so you are allowed to be there. But they're lying, telling me that I'm not allowed to live there. They said that they called the cops, and of course, they exaggerated what I was doing. All I was doing was fishing. But these types of reports are very common in Florida. Let's suppose that I was breaking the law and that I was doing what they said I was doing. The proper thing to do is not to dial 911. The proper thing to do when nobody's life, property, or health is in danger is to file a police report online. In this case, the police report would have gone to FWC, the Florida Wildlife Conservation. If in fact they had videos of me harassing an alligator like they say they did, the right thing to do would be to upload it to the website of FWC. They didn't even have to encounter me. They didn't have to engage in a dispute with me. They didn't have to scream at me from across a lake. None of that was necessary. If in fact they did witness me committing a crime, all they would have had to do was go to FWC and report a claim through their website. They could have even uploaded the video directly to the website from their cell phone. This did not require to call the police. That was an unnecessary escalation. The proper method to report somebody doing something that does not threaten property, life, or the health of other people is simply to go online, upload your evidence, and law enforcement will evaluate it at a precinct or at an office, not having to bring police officers to the ground. The best thing you could do is just upload the files to the police website. It would be advisable to make a police report if you have a business or if you believe that the incident is going to be a reoccurring theme. Then it is good to have legal precedent by starting to file police reports. But this is usually not the case in your vicinity of your neighborhood. But if you have a place of business and you feel that somebody's activity will eventually lead to some type of repercussion, and then in that situation, it does make a lot of sense to create legal precedent and just start to document something if you believe it's going to become an ongoing thing. For example, if somebody's making a threat and you don't know if it's valid, this would be a good time to document this, especially if you believe it's going to become a reoccurring theme for this person to continue doing that, because in the future, if they continue this type of behavior, you may need some type of legal framework to prove that that person has been harassing you or that there is a pattern of behavior. And if you think that in the future you're going to have to take legal actions against this person, it wouldn't hurt to have extra documentation. This incident happened to me in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can see that this neighborhood is so dangerous that this company actually has private security to escort their employees or patients to their vehicles. So to file a police report in a neighborhood like this is pretty much to waste your time. Also keep in mind that I don't live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have no interest to go to a court there. I have no interest in to persecute anybody that lives there. So unless somebody does something that personally angers me enough to where I feel it warrants my time, which in this situation, while it was definitely a serious crime and a definite concern of my safety, I really felt that to call the police here would be to waste my time. First of all, I'm in their environment. It's not like I live in the city. I kind of put myself in a situation where it's their environment, it's their police force. Therefore, what purpose would I have in calling a police report? Most people would have stopped and called the police. I don't know if the police, if the police allows their city to look like this, why would I call the police if, in this case, it doesn't seem like they're doing a very good job at anything?
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. What do you want?
Now, I've had many people tell me that they were going to stand their ground and use their amendments to protect them. That is quite possibly one of the dumbest things you could ever do. When fleeing for your safety is an option, you should always pick the option to flee. As you can see, I left enough space between me and this vehicle where I could flee again if I had to. And sure enough, the person did not give up and they went on to come at me again.
Now, why do you keep on?
Not only did I not report this to the law, most likely that person was definitely armed and there was a risk of me being hurt. Fleeing was clearly the safest thing I could do for myself. A lot of times you have to decide in a very short period of time if it's worth to escalate a situation, but that's not always a scenario that's likely. It's almost like people are waiting. They're anxious for an opportunity to be able to do that. I'm gonna tell you something. I am constantly, because of my work, in situations where you have to consider whether you defend or flee, and 99% of the time I have chosen to flee, and it has always been the easiest way to terminate one of these situations. Even if the person that was trying to hurt me did lose the battle, which that's a 50-50 chance, by the way. This could have turned into hospital stays, court procedures. Who knows how complicated this case could have got if I decided to stay there. It would have been better to make a few traffic violations that were somewhat dangerous. It would have been easier to do that than to possibly face this person off and see which one of us had that 50% chance. Just today, a case out of Pennsylvania came out where the person tried to stop a car burglar and they were both lost in an exchange. I don't want to put myself in that situation to protect a vehicle. It's just not worth it. And while people are sometimes just anxious and ready to find themselves in that situation, as somebody who could be in that situation quite often, I almost always choose the option to flee. But what about when these crimes are happening in the neighborhood where you live, a house next door, a house across the street? A lot of times engaging these people by calling the law is also ineffective. Many times the law does absolutely nothing. And when it comes to knowing places of focus like houses where people are living and they're using it for illegal activities, the law is not stupid. Most of these people have criminal records. I can go to a city that I've never lived in before, never been to, and within a few hours I can tell you specific properties where illegal activity is taking place. Do you think that the police officers who patrol these communities have informants both working for them and just volunteer to be informants? They know where these houses of focus or houses of activity are in neighborhoods, and for you to make a police report is sometimes just redundant because they know this. And like I said, I can go to a city that I've never been into and I can pretty much pinpoint houses of activity or businesses of activity. What makes you think that the law enforcement isn't aware of this? Most of the time, the law enforcement, which has better resources than you, a civilian, by the way, knows where these things are happening, knows who's doing it, and they do absolutely nothing about it. Making a report on a neighbor for doing some suspicious activity that law enforcement probably knows about anyways is going to do nothing but possibly turn those people against you, and now you are the target of their aggression. And the best thing you can do is just move somewhere safer Most people would say, I'm going to hold my ground down. And you know what? I did that for years, and it just wasted my time. It wasted my resources. It made me enemy of people unnecessarily. And the law, with 50 reports on one house on our street that we had, that all the neighbors got together and just every time something happened, reported. They had like 50 some reports. Some of these reports were people getting stabbed, people getting hurt, there was overdose deaths. Law enforcement never did anything about it. The best thing to do in a situation like that is to move. And the truth is, if you're living in a bad neighborhood, there's always going to be something bad going on, and nothing is ever going to be done about it. The best thing you could do is move to a community where crime isn't taking place. And all that time that you're going to spend calling police, sitting down, filing paperwork, or talking to a police officer, you could spend that time working at a job, saving some money so you can move somewhere better eventually. And I'm just going to tell you, I can never remember a single occurrence where I have seen the police getting involved in a neighborhood dispute, resolving anything. If anything, it just makes things go worse. Homeowners, for some reason that I just don't understand, seem to have a whole lot more to dispute about because they feel entitled to their properties and their neighborhoods, that they own their properties and their neighborhoods as well. Alright guys, here's another situation where I was the victim of an assault and I decided not to press charges. In this case, I was doing a live stream video in Fort Myers Beach right before Hurricane Ian, and this homeless person here with a green shirt was talking to me earlier in the video, but now he's got his friend with the white t-shirt. I almost knew what was going to happen, but I decided that despite the fact I knew I was going to get into an assault situation, I almost knew where this was going to head. When I walked into it, I could just sense it. And the person decided to go ahead and headbutt me. As you can see, he actually had an infection on his head, and I did have an infection on my head for a while after he headbutted me. Now, I decided to stand my ground and to not press charges on this person. I really have nothing to gain by putting a homeless person in jail. Now watch, in the red pickup truck, the armed wannabe hero civilian gets involved in a problem that's absolutely not his. He just made a problem that wasn't his. I was the victim, and I was not going to press charges. Somehow he decided that despite the fact the victim wasn't going to press charges, that he was going to get involved. When he saw the behavior erratically of the homeless person, he went from an armed citizen who was going to become a hero into now he's fleeing. You can see he went right into the bus and he's just fled the scene because he realized he got in over his head. This is another thing you never want to do. If you see somebody having a dispute and it's none of your business, here's a homeless guy and here's a big fat dude and they're getting into an argument on the side of the road, why would you make somebody else's problem your own? And I'm going to tell you why this person did that. Because he was armed and he felt because he was armed, he had some artificial bravery. However, when he saw the seriousness of the situation, he immediately decided to flee. And that's another situation that I want you guys to know about. A lot of people think because they're armed, they feel invincible, but they don't know that when it comes down to a split-second decision, they may not have the guts to actually go through with it. And now the person on the other side is disarming you, and quite possibly even been circumstances where they disarm you and they use your own protection against you because you're too cowardly to actually go through with it. They were portraying like they were going to be a criminal, but when you walk to them and try to disarm them, they will flee because they don't even have the guts as criminals to do it. So it's interesting how many times people who are portraying to be criminals don't have the guts to do it, while civilians who definitely don't have the guts to do it will be the first ones pretending like they're tough until things get real last minute. They get disarmed and get hurt with their own protection. Escalating a situation is never the answer. And this ideology that people in the United States have of standing their ground, while it is legal, it does not mean that you have to pursue that option every time possible, especially when a lot of times people who impose themselves that way don't have the guts to actually carry it out. Many times, a lot of situations can be avoided by simply leaving the site and doing everything you can to avoid a situation. Fleeing, walking away, running away, driving away, creating a distraction, whatever you can do to de-escalate a situation and just leave the scene will a lot of times be a much better option than sticking around and trying to prove that you're brave to complete strangers. Take this situation where a person was on the road having an overdose. There were 5 police cars within sight of this person, and not a single police officer cared to come over here and help this person. Now, I didn't call the police. I walked up to the officers that were already there and I said, hey, that person over there is overdosing. You guys are going to have to call the paramedics. And they did it reluctantly. They would much rather chase down and break into a drug dealer's house and take all their crap, because there may be a stash of money they can get to, who knows what incentive they have. But in that case, that day, helping this person on the side of the road was definitely not their priority. I mean, kind of ironic that the purpose of taking down drug dealers is to save people on the streets, yet on the same street where they were on, there was somebody who needed help, and they all ignored the person overdosing because they were so excited about busting the drug dealers. But the purpose of busting the drug dealers is to help people from overdosing. Somebody was overdosing right in front of them, and they all looked the other way and completely ignored it until me, a civilian, got involved and told them to please call the paramedics. And I say that to help you, the normal civilian, realize that many times law enforcement knows what's going on. They just don't give a crap. They'd rather go after criminals because they have a personal vendetta or who knows what other things are going on. You're best not getting involved in something that does not pertain to you directly. Take here in between Hillsborough and Polk County, where there have been a huge number of investigations and arrests and stings about human smuggling. Ironically, many of the police officers are driving past these women every single day on a daily basis, possibly even knowing their names and their schedules because they're working in the same troubled communities. Yet, no end is put to it. Makes you wonder. And again, so if the law enforcement's aware, why are you going to get involved in something that clearly it's their job to fix it and they're not fixing it? Possibly you getting in the way is not going to fix the problem. It's just going to make you a target. And it's not uncommon for law enforcement to be culprit in whatever's going on in the streets or allowing it in some way or another. Recently, we had a report of a police officer who was fired because he had been buying from undercovers. And my question is, why are these, why is the government selling this stuff to people just to have it on document and then years later pulls it out of a case? Oh, by the way, here, 3 years ago you bought from us. So you sold the government selling this stuff to people just to document it, so when they need to fire you, they have evidence that 3 years ago you did something. So here's a police officer that's breaking the law. And for 3 years, they held on to this information. Who knows how much other bad things this officer was doing. Obviously, if a police officer is involved in buying narcotics, they're obviously not somebody you'd want in the street. But they allowed it for some reason. 3 years later, they need to fire the person. They pull out of a file. Oh, 3 years ago, you bought from an undercover detective. And you guys were just waiting until... You get what I'm saying? The law was the one that was selling it. The law was the one that was buying it, and they only did it to document that this person did something bad so they could fire them when they needed to fire them for who knows what other reason. Why would you want to get involved in that mess? The best thing you could do is avoid law enforcement at all costs unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, on my channel, unfortunately, I have had to have constant dealings with law enforcement because I need to inform the public of how these things work, in particular, how people are escalating situations and how they'll blow things out of proportion. You watching from home, I bet you've never had this many police encounters. The reason I've had these police encounters is because here I am as a minority trying to enjoy the outdoors. So on one hand, law-abiding people who are trying to enjoy the outdoors are harassed, while the people that are engaging in all of the bad stuff, police knows who they are and they do nothing about it. That is how, unfortunately, law enforcement works in the United States, especially when there's some type of discrimination or profiling going on. And I've documented this thoroughly on my channel just so that you guys can see what's going on. I first started to record law enforcement encounters when I realized that they were happening to me disproportionately. They sure aren't pulling over 71-year-old males in convertible Mercedes-Benzes this often, so why is it happening to me so often? So I started to record law enforcement because I was trying to compile kind of a portfolio of instances, because I was at the point where I was really considering trying to sue the local police department because it was really inappropriate. I remember one year I was detained over 50 times by Collier County police officers. That comes up to about once a week, and all I was doing is enjoying fishing and outdoor activities. And if I was breaking the law, you believe me, if you have 50 police encounters, If you're breaking the law, one of those encounters is going to lead to you getting arrested. I was never arrested, so that just shows you that I wasn't really doing anything wrong. They are incredible fighters. No bites, so we're going to keep going. In fact, there's a huge alligator, so we're going to leave.
Don't pet him, he'll bite.
No lo toques, que te muerde. I'm surprised it didn't hit on the back bumper. He was supposed to hit on my back bumper though. So, part of fishing, I guess. He was supposed to hit on my back bumper though, on the right, on this side right here. He was supposed to hit right there. I had a bass right there earlier.
Oh yeah?
I caught it and I laid it down right there, so he should have hit it.
Smell it. Come here. Maybe somebody else had a dog in here, eh?
Did it hit? Yeah, it hit. There you go. Yeah, I had a bass there earlier. So we hit a checkpoint, folks. So one of the best tools that you have is simply to avoid dealing with law enforcement when it's not necessary, especially over things that are minute, insignificant, and not even criminal. If you're dealing with something in your neighborhood, consider moving as a prime option. Never needlessly escalate a situation when fleeing is an easy and safer and more time-saving option. Remember, if there's an obstacle on the road or somebody who's defenseless is vulnerable, this is definitely the time to call law enforcement. And remember that not all police officers are good, and also not all police officers are bad. I'm going to leave you with this incident that I had in the city of Houston where a police officer actually warned me about a parking scam. He didn't have to do that, but he went out of his way to help me to make sure I didn't get an unnecessary parking ticket.
School right here. The parking attendants are kind of ruthless on.
Many times sending your evidence in through an email is a lot easier. Many times what you're dealing with is so insignificant that instead of calling 911, you can just report it to the police precinct. The vast majority of the time, however, absolutely nothing is done. So unless you're dealing with a very serious situation where somebody vulnerable is in danger or there's an item on the road that can hurt somebody that needs to be removed, consider whether the situation really warrants having police officers coming out to your location. Not everybody around the world has the benefit of living in a country where they can dial 3 letters or numbers and have law enforcement show up. And it would just show a lot of appreciation, not only to the resources of your local state, but also to the men who are out there taking care of all these dangerous situations. You may drive past a car accident and call the law and think nothing of it, but if something really bad happened, these are the people who have to go out there, document it, move those people from where they are, and tell their families about what happened. They have a very difficult job as is already, and the circumstances that they deal with on a daily basis are aggravating, difficult, stressful, scary, and perhaps may cause some type of mental damage. Imagine if every single day you're out there seeing car accidents, victims. This is a very stressful job, and it would just be a lot of respect that you could show on your part for the work that they're doing, but not bothering them with completely stupid crap.